Anyway, okay, well, and you don't want to say anything about Antarctica? You don't want to talk about, did you want to talk about the rainforest?
Castlerock?
Yeah. Yeah. Just leave them with something, and then we'll move on to the financial stuff.
Okay, I find it fascinating. I'm going to leave you with this because that is definitely something that we can talk about on another show as well. But I do believe that I do find it fascinating that 2 months ago, there was this article written in a scientist journal website, and for 4 years of research in this, and I think it's called Anita, their experiment Anita, where they were throwing these balloons up and doing something with the balloons, and and then identifying the particles from the balloons or something. I have no idea. Again, I'm not a scientist either, just so you know. I know that's hard to believe. I know it's hard to believe. But anyway, they were 4 years of research. They come out and they say, gee, we might have a mirror world here, like a parallel universe, right? Fascinating, isn't it? Where left would be right, right would be left, and up would be down. So 4 years of research, 4 years plus of research, that they determined that this might just be an area where we have a parallel universe. And yes, there are other articles that support the fact that thousands and thousands of years ago, Antarctica actually was a rainforest. Very interesting. But 2 months later, which would have been, 6 days ago, they released another article where they immediately tried to debunk, the mirror universe, the parallel universe, by saying, well, actually, we think that it was reflections from ice formations. And I'm not lying. This is a scientific paper that was written, and people have tried to use this to say, see, that's not true. It was completely debunked. That didn't happen. And 9:30. Okay, sorry about that. But that it was. They wrote this paper, and in the paper it said that it was a possible explanation that it was reflections and ice formations. So what is Castlerock?
Yeah, just explain Castlerock.
Castlerock is an actual rock. It's a rock. It's a huge rock in Antarctica, and it is, you can find a picture of it for some reason in the Air and Space Museum on the Smithsonian Institute website. The Air and Space Museum has a picture of Castlerock, Antarctica on it.
And is there not there's
a naval force station.
Yeah, there's a station there. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we've got them pumped up on that. All right.
Well, Doc House Q mentions a Castlerock.
Yeah.
I do find it rather interesting that a couple of days ago, 8 days ago, was it? That Trump did write a memorandum, or not an executive order, but a memorandum on Antarctica, and wanting an answer back within 60 days from several different agencies, the Department of Energy and the OMB, and I really can't remember everybody involved. Homeland Security, I believe, many agencies on ice-breaking fleets to have in operation in Antarctica for exploration and recovery of resources. and the Coast Guard was involved in that too. And they are to, from June 9th, I believe it was the date that was released, and from 60 days from that date, they're to report back to him on the status of that project. So just thought that was very interesting.
Yeah, and this is maybe a good time to segue into Trump and Melania travel in the U.S. in their RV.
Yeah, sure. I mean, we're talking about travel. We might as well segue into that.
Yeah.
Absolutely. I've always wanted it. I've been seriously considering selling my house and living in an RV.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't think Trump meant the same thing, but.
Well, what do you think he meant? What do you think he meant?
Well, I don't know about you, but I am having a hard time envisioning Trump and Melania driving across country in an RV. That's just me. So.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't know. What does RV stand for besides recreational vehicle?
I know. Revaluation.
Oh, wow. That must be it.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Trump he drops these things and has been dropping them ever since he's taken office. So, yeah, I don't see him. Can't you just picture that Trump driving this big RV and a parade of Secret Service agents in their cars behind him and in front of him and going down the road? I mean, I don't see that. So, yeah, I believe that he was talking about the revaluation of currencies, which also relates to the financial reset, which I think is fastly approaching. Hopefully, I'll know.
It certainly didn't have anything to do with what he was talking about.
Yeah, driving around. Yeah, driving around, seeing the country.
Mean, yeah, out of nowhere, he's like, "What do you call those things? What are they? An RV, right?" So, yeah, definite sign.
So, what do you have to say about that?
Don't put me on the spot like that. You're going to go ahead with that.
I kind of exhausted myself this morning in our Discord chat talking about that.
No, you know what? Just exhaust yourself a little more.
Well,
I think you should talk about. I mean, if you're all fine with it. I mean, the idea behind. Okay, let's talk about this. What the base would be as far as the reset, what would be used, what was supposed to be injected, or what the idea behind that is, and then we can go from there. Which would be your currency.
Okay, so yeah, I mean, this is part of the financial reset, the global reset, the new financial system, whatever term you want to use. That has always been part of it. This, the dinar has been a subject for at least 10 years, if not more. Other Zim currency, Zimbabwe, the dong, Vietnamese dong has been another currency that's been talked about. And so recently, I guess in the last maybe 2 or 3 weeks, there's been a lot of information out there about that, about the tiers, about this, about that, the 800 numbers. And so I was asked that this morning in the Discord chat. And so I finally reluctantly answered it. So I guess I'll just say it here. As far as I'm aware, and I have asked the question of our network every time that the reval has come up, is the public going to get paid? The public going to get paid? And the answer is always no. So I kind of disclosed that this morning, and I think that undoubtedly disappointed some people, and I understand that, but that's not the reason for the revaluation of the currencies is not to make a bunch of people millionaires. It's to kickstart and help lay the foundation from a liquidity standpoint for the new financial system. And that's always what it's been about. So I could be wrong. I hope I'm wrong. I don't think I will be, but I could be wrong. And, maybe everybody will be able to cash out their dinar at, the hoped for rate of $3. I don't think that's going to be the case. I think it's probably going to be pennies or nickels or dimes. But it could be. It very well could be. But I don't think that's the issue. I think the issue is what's the purpose of a new financial system? Because the problem with this whole thing, this whole financial system, this whole money thing is that this has been a mechanism that they have used to control us for hundreds, if not thousands of years. And we need to break through. We need to break that. Because I think if we're an evolved society, we will get to the point where money will not even be part of our society. Evolved societies don't use money because they don't need to use money. They have everything that they need. So I think that's where we were. I think that's where we're going. I think this revaluation is a transition step to get to the point where at some point in time we won't be using money. I think it's going to be a way to basically bring up the third world countries to equalize everything throughout the planet so that everybody's on the same footing. Everybody has infrastructure. Everybody has electricity, running water, those kinds of things that we in the United States and the developed countries take for granted. And I think once that's accomplished, then I think new technology will be released, the technology that's been suppressed, that's been kept from us, that we have paid for, that they have used to control us for a long time. And I think then at that point, we're going to see a whole new world. So that's my opinion in a nutshell. And I know you and I have discussed this numerous times. So why don't you impart your opinion and your knowledge and your thinking on this whole subject?
Okay, well, before I do that, I'm going to say, because when you threw that wrench in the whole how the show's going to go, and I came in here before the show started, and I let people know this was going to be an interactive show where they can put their questions in the chat, and that we would do our best to answer those questions. So, and I've seen throughout this throughout our conversation here, I've seen, I'm not sure if it's the same person who's putting it in here, but it is something that I see often. So I am going to start off by reading some of these questions. And one is, people definitely want to know if we're looking at NESARA, GESARA. Got it.
Okay.
Answered.
Yeah. Okay. It's not like I haven't answered that 10 or 20 or 100 or 500 times already, but I will do it one more time.
Okay.
There is no legislation, NESARA. Okay. You guys can look it up. You can read the guys. The name escapes me. The economist who came up with that concept. He tried to get enough sponsors to get a bill introduced in Congress. He never got enough. He wrote books too. I think one book, maybe two. And it didn't work, guys. And basically part of it is I believe no more taxes and, debt forgiveness and all these different things. And then we've got the Congress or whatever where, special forces went in at night and held guns to their head to make them sign the bill. And then there's the famous non-existent Rehnquist decision. And like I've said before, this whole thing is a Bush crime family con is what it was. And, you can track a lot of that stuff back in the beginning to this lady named herself the Dove of Oneness, who basically parlayed this into money, monetary gain. I don't think she's still with us. I think she passed away a few years ago. The NESARA is not a real bill. It was never passed. It never was introduced. You can check the Library of Congress or the congressional record to see I mean, it just, and you should read the guy's books, because he wrote about it. And his one regret in one of his books, he said that he was sorry that he ever introduced this, because of all the fraud and all the all the fraud and all the scams that arose out of it. So, and we still see the NESARA, GESARA, and of course, I mean, some people have taken this to, Archangel Michael walks, the halls of the Pentagon and this kind of stuff. And so anyway, I just want to address that. Now, having said all that, if things go well and things go according to plan, what we will see is something very, very close to that. Although I'm not sure how it's going to work from the standpoint of the debt forgiveness. I don't know that it's going to be debt forgiveness per se. I think it's going to be debt cancellation, because the central banks headed by the Rothschilds have created this debt society, and that debt, they were going to use it to basically crash the whole economy, transfer all of our wealth to them to pay for the debt, because they were gonna come out and say, well, guys, we've got all this debt and somebody's gonna have to pay for it. So guess what? We're gonna have to liquidate all your pension accounts and your 401ks and all that stuff to pay for it, because this system, guys, it just didn't work. But guess what? We're going to come back up with a new system. It's going to be one world currency. It's going to be a cashless society, and we won't have all these problems again. And then they'd have total control over us. So that was the objective. It's not going to be accomplished now, and we're going to have a asset-backed currencies all over the world. They're going to be backed by assets. So if you're an accountant, you understand how that works, because the way it is now, it's debt-based money, which is on the wrong side of the balance sheet. You have a balance sheet, and on one side are the assets, which are like the pluses, and on the other side you have the liabilities, which are the minuses. And that's how you come up with net worth. You hear people talk about so and so's net worth. Well, you take the assets and you liquidate all the assets and you pay off all the liabilities, and whatever you have left is what your net worth is. And that is different from your net income, which is what goes on your tax return. But your tax return does not have a listing of your assets, nor does it have a listing of your liabilities. So anyway, having probably confused everybody now, the new system will be based on assets. So there will be backing of the currency. And that's the process that we're going to be going through here in the next probably weeks and months, is those assets that will be used to infuse liquidity into the system will be inventoried, they'll be counted, they'll be evaluated and valuated, and then money will be liquidity will be put into the system in the form of currency, and that's how the system is going to start. So, and I don't know what GESARA is. I'm assuming NESARA is the U.S. and GESARA is global. And so I guess from a certain standpoint, people talking about that in a conceptual way is probably accurate, but in a definitive way, as far as actual legislation, I'm not sure. I don't know about GESARA. I don't know what that is, but NESARA I know is not real, because we spent a few months, 3 or 4 of our guys jumped on that, and it all, it originates back with the farm claims and all those things, which are accurate, which are true. But like any other con, it goes sideways at some point down the line. And they tried to connect it to this guy who actually tried to introduce legislation, and he didn't get enough sponsors for the legislation to introduce the NESARA concept. So that's it in a nutshell. But so conceptually, it could be accurate to a certain degree, but in reality, there is no NESARA bill, so it's not legislation that needs to be enforced. So thank you for that question. And that will be the last time. That will be the last time I'm going to address that.
Well, what about the Drain the Swamp book that is associated with?
Well, that's one of the, I believe that's one of the books that, and his name escapes me at this point. I suppose I could get that, or somebody maybe in the chat knows who I'm talking about. How long have I been researching into NESARA? I researched NESARA probably 10 years ago. That idea was, floating around almost 10 years ago. So we had 3 or 4 people that looked into it. We looked into different segments of that, different different issues, and nobody could confirm it. Like I say, the farm claim, it originates with the farm claims, I believe, which are real. And then it goes to the legislation that never got enacted or never even got introduced because this guy, he couldn't get enough signatures. He couldn't get enough sponsors to get it introduced. So you can check the congressional record if it ever got introduced or voted on or whatever it's going to be there. You're not going to find it. There is no Rehnquist decision. I mean, these kinds of things just don't happen. So it's a nice story, though. I mean, it's gotten everybody sidetracked, and everybody, a lot of this kind of stuff. This kind of a story is kind of like to get everybody to stand down. It's kind of like the cavalry's coming. Don't worry about it. We got this. And that's to me, that's the con. The con is that, hey, stand down, everybody. We don't need to worry about it. You don't need to do anything because it's already in play. And so, that's, the Bush crime family is notorious for cons. They are, have to go down in history as some of the best con men there ever were. I've done investigations on trading programs, scams, and ultimately they always connected back at somewhere in the process back to somebody connected with the CIA who was always connected with the Bush crime family. So that's just another con. And that's all I want to say about that.
Okay, and some people are wanting to know, when you're talking about this stuff, what does that mean as far as their own savings or cash on hand?
Well, there's going to be a transition period, and I don't think that it's going to be noticeable from the standpoint that you're going to be able to trade out, your Federal Reserve notes for the new United States currency. And I don't even know whether that is even going to be something that you will have to do. I think it's going to be something that will probably automatically happen, and you'll be probably kept whole from the standpoint it'll be 1-to-1. I don't know that you're not going to lose any money. I know everybody's thinking, should I draw money out? Should I do this? Should I do that? No, there's nothing you really need to do because everybody's going to be kept whole. Now, overseas, it could be a whole different story overseas, and I'm not sure how that's going to work, but that's not anything that I think anybody should be concerned about as far as the dollars overseas. I mean, a lot of people have said that there's Federal Reserve dollars that are overseas, and then there's Federal Reserve dollars that are in the United States. And in theory, that's sort of true because, the United States, the Federal Reserve notes of the United States currency overseas is used because it is the reserve currency. So therefore, everybody has to have that on hand if they want to do global business because, and we all know about the petrodollar, where OPEC, because of their close relationship, primarily Saudi Arabia's old relationship with the Bush crime family and the Rockefellers in their oil business stuff, that was one of the deals they cut, that we won't drill oil in the United States. So OPEC can become strong, but you've got to require everybody to use the dollar, which obviously strengthens the dollar from a lot of different standpoints because you got to use it as the reserve currency. So that's really what that was all about. And as we've seen now, Trump has opened up the United States for the energy business, and we now have all the energy that we'll ever need here. We don't need to buy it from overseas. We don't need to buy it from anybody. We have our own. And so that right there should tell you everything you need to know about the former administrations who would not open up our energy sector. They made us dependent on OPEC in the Middle East. So, and the reason for that was the dollar, the reserve currency. They wanted to make the petrodollar strong so that Bush and the crime families of Rockefeller and the Rothschilds could exploit that currency. They use it for the trading programs. They use it for a lot of other different things, but that made the U.S. dollar king all over the world, and that was their objective. Okay.
Okay.
Now
And
you
someone
can.
had a question about the IQDs that were.
Yeah, that's the Iraqi.
Dropped by.
Yeah, IQD.
I
That
know.
was.
Yeah.
Yeah. What was the question?
Well, I was trying to find it actually. It looks like the chat's gone up too far and I can't see it now, but something about dropping IQDs in the US by the Bush family. So I don't know. I can't find that question now. I'm seeing a lot of comments about war castles, and which would be about the postmaster.
Do you want to take that one?
No, that's definitely a question for you. Don't change the show up on me again.
Well, are we talking about the Russell Gould thing?
Yes.
Oh, I was hoping that wasn't the case.
It's the case. Does everybody know that there was a new Postmaster General put into started his position 2 days ago? DeJoy is his last name. DeJoy.
Yeah, I knew about. Yeah.
And his wife, she was an ambassador to, I can't remember who, and she is possibly going to be the ambassador to Canada. But he just started that position in 2 days ago, June 15th. And we all know that Trump wants to turn the post office into a corporation.
Yeah, and I think I've mentioned this before. I can remember back, I believe in maybe the 90s, that Ross Perot wanted to buy the post office and turn it private, and government obviously wouldn't sell it to him. And I'll say, I have some personal experience into that. One of the reasons, and it may not be as important as today as what it once was, but if you don't think that they don't read your mail, you are, well, I can just assure you that they do. They did, and they may still do. But that was one of the reasons why they weren't going to allow the post office to not be a government function, because the agencies, the three-letter agencies, use that for their own purposes, for investigation purposes. I had a case one time in IRS CID, which is criminal investigation, and yes, he was a law enforcement officer. He's not just the auditor that sometimes you have to see if you fudge a little bit on your tax return. This was actually the enforcement division. He had a badge, he had a gun, and we worked together because we were going after the same target, and he found out we had a lawsuit. So the attorney referred him to me, and we sort of worked together. And whenever I needed to know where the target was, I could just call him, and he would check with the post office and get back with me and let me know where she was, because we had to get some papers to her or something. We had to send her some stuff. And so he let me know. I think it may be when we had to serve her in the lawsuit. But anyway, he let me know where she was. He said, hang on. I talked to him on the phone, and he comes back to me. And then my grandmother was a postmaster in a small post office in the Midwest. And one time in a weak moment, I got her to admit to me that they had some orders from time to time to open mail. So anyway, getting back to the Russell Gould thing, there was he had a partner, David W. Miller, I think it is, and they
David
had
Wynn.
David Windmiller. There you go. Yeah. And they had
Well,
the
David something hyphen
so
semicolon.
stop it. And this was the this was the syntax thing, and Gould has reached out to our group through an intermediary, and we probably are not going to get involved with that whole situation. But it's like this. I mean, I don't know. It's a legal thing, and I'm not a lawyer, so I don't really can't give you an opinion on it, other than to say that if you think that Russell Gould, using whatever information he is using to try to give himself some sort of status, if you feel like he has got the juice to go in and take over the country and run the country, then I don't know. I got a bridge to sell you, or swampland in Florida to sell you. I mean, it's just not going to happen. So, that may be something that down the road, after we get our country back and we restore the republic, that might be a situation that may come into play at some point down the road. But, I'm not impressed with Russell Gould. I've heard him talk recently a couple times, and I don't know about the rest of you, but he sure isn't somebody I'd want running much of anything. So I hope that takes care of that question.